Hi everyone, welcome back to the Art of Business English. Going solo this week, so another episode from me. I believe it's episode 93 today. And well, the response I got from last week's interview was great. Really appreciate everyone's feedback. So what I thought I'd do today was actually a follow-up episode because I did get some really interesting comments from my mentor. Thank you to him, to Richard. Thank you, Richard. And basically what I was going to do is just add a few little points to last week's interview with my brother-in-law Jamie, which was great. I hope you found it all very insightful. A lot of you gave me some pretty positive feedback, which is nice. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to elaborate on a few of the ideas that came out of the feedback. Okay, so I just wanted to just pop in a few things, maybe expand on some of the ideas that were presented in that interview with Jamie last week. And hopefully you guys will benefit a little bit more from this. So today I'm home. I'm just chilling here. If you hear my dog screaming in the background, I'm sorry, but she's a bit crazy today. Not sure what's going on. But anyway, bear with me. So today we'll be covering a few little points on opening meetings and preparing for them effectively. So it's really, in essence, part 2 of episode 92. So that was last week. This week, we're going to be just expanding on that a little bit more. So today, let's start. What I'm going to be looking at is basically, we'll start with the pre-meeting. Okay, there was a few things raised here by my mentor, which I thought would be useful for you guys. So, he was talking a little bit. We have to be really clear about what we mean when we say a first big meeting. First big meetings nowadays, it's rare to have a cold, just like a cold big meeting. Normally, when you have a big meeting with an important client or with an important key stakeholder, so someone that's important to your business, that meeting has had a bit of preamble, a lead up to it. Things have been happening behind the scenes. So that's important to include in the agenda. So the agenda would ideally have all of the attendees already defined so people know who's coming. All right. So in most of the meetings, the introductions would be just a preamble. They wouldn't actually be included in the minutes. That would just be like a corridor for conversation. Basically, when you introduce the people in the meeting, they should already have been outlined in the agenda so that the other party knows exactly who's coming. Okay, so just to clarify that point, another thing that's important is in the pre-meeting we need to make sure that we have prepared effectively all of our handouts and all the relevant information that we'll be taking to that meeting. And something that was interesting, which Richard mentioned, was that getting approval for meeting information is important. And that means getting approval from people who will not even be attending the meeting, but are people who are a part of your organization. So you really need to make sure that whatever information you do take to a meeting, especially if it's an important meeting, it is correct and you've got the okay from that department. You don't want to go taking information from finance or other departments that maybe are not finalized or are not correct, because that could lead to some issues. So really important in your pre-meeting that you've got the okay. Once you've collected all of that information that you'll be taking, you've got the okay and the buy-in. That's what we say in English. The buy-in from all the other relevant departments within your business. Okay, so that's something that we need to consider in the pre-meeting organization. Okay, so let's look then at the agenda, which I just touched on. So the agenda should include all the people that will be there, have their roles defined, and as I mentioned, it's like a corridor. This introduction at the beginning, it's a bit like small talk. It's just putting people into context, but ideally they should already be contextualized because you've put them in the agenda. Another thing is that it should list all the attendees, and the agenda ideally should be agreed by both parties. Okay, before the meeting. That way, we know what both parties are really bringing to the meeting or expecting to get out of the meeting to some extent. Okay, so it's really clear for a really important big meeting that the agenda has been sent to the other party prior to the beginning of the meeting so that everyone's clear on that. Both parties should agree on the agenda so that the stage is set for an effective meeting. It would be strange for the other party to have not seen or had a copy of the agenda before a big meeting. Okay? And of course, we need to make sure that in that agenda, we set the expectations of what each person is expecting to get out of that meeting. Okay? All right, so let's look at the next point, which was brought up, and that is, these first meetings. We did mention, a lot of first contact meetings in the previous episode. How important they are, but a lot of first meetings can be big and important. But what's often overlooked is that they are designed to set the tone for future meetings. So Jamie, my brother-in-law, did mention this. Relationship build rather than outcomes. Many meetings are there to build relationships. So if you're focused really entirely on outcomes, then maybe you're going to do that to the detriment of relationships. So it's really important to try and be focused on building relationships in that first meeting as opposed to trying to get some specific outcomes. And that's where your emotional intelligence is going to come into play. And I'm going to cover that in a second. And, a first big meeting rarely finishes in a deal or with people signing. So these first big meetings, you need to think of them with a view to building positive relationships and setting the tone for future meetings. Often these big meetings that are first contact, they can be really just for exploratory purposes to make sure that you understand really well the needs or the desired outcomes of the other party. Okay, so that's something to consider. Don't just go in there expecting to get your outcomes. Look first focus first on trying to build relationships. Okay, and the next one that we're going to cover is opening the meeting. Now, the opening the meeting is generally, to set the tone for the next meeting. That sounds quite weird, doesn't it? But, when we open the meeting, we really want to make sure that we set the tone. Generally, the introductions are not really part of the minutes, but you should always be, putting things into context. What do I mean? Well, basically, we should always put at the beginning of a meeting, the meeting into context, okay? It should look back at what's being discussed. If it's the second meeting, then obviously you could look at what was discussed or agreed on in the previous meeting. If it's the first big meeting, then you could reflect on what things have happened behind the scenes, what discussions have taken place in the lead up to the meeting, and then put them into context, okay? That way everyone's on the same page, okay? You should review what has been discussed before, as I mentioned. It depends if you are looking at a first big meeting or if it's a follow-up meeting. Okay, you'd always discuss what was said or agreed previously, and that really puts the meeting into context so everyone's following the same path. Okay, and what is the preface to the whole meeting? That is important. A lot of discussions have taken place before the meeting. There's a whole purpose to why we are meeting, especially if it's the first big meeting. So in the beginning, when we open the meeting, obviously once we've made sure that everyone is aware of who's at the meeting, then we need to put it into context and maybe discuss, say, as we're all here today for the following reason. As you know, we've spoken with your team about this previously, and the culmination of this discussion is this meeting here today, etc. So you're really just putting it into context. Everyone's on the same page, and then you can move forward with your meeting. Okay. It's rare, as I said, that the first big meeting is like a cold meeting, so people have never had any context. So keeping in mind that it's very rare for a cold meeting to happen, at the beginning, you should always put that meeting into context and sort of like discuss what was brought up previously. Okay. All right. Let's look then at the next one, which I did mention earlier, is emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is incredibly important, and we did touch on it in the episode last week. And we said, you need to be aware of when you may not get your outcomes or when you need to change your desired outcomes based on what the other person is telling you. So this is emotional intelligence. And something that my mentor Richard also mentioned was that you need to know or have enough emotional that emotional intelligence to know when is the best time to adjourn a meeting. Now, if you're not familiar with the word adjourn means to pause or stop it, postpone it for another day. So sometimes, especially if you're running on a tight schedule, you need to, and it becomes very clear that you're not going to be able to achieve or move through all the points that you would like to discuss or cover in that meeting. And you need to have enough emotional intelligence to see that we need to adjourn this meeting and then arrange another follow-up meeting for another day. And that's part of the whole relationship building process. If you push, and you try and put pressure on someone to get things done, then maybe they're going to get upset and feel pressured. You don't want that, because remember, as Jamie also mentioned, meetings are about relationship building. So it's very important that we use our emotional intelligence to know when we're going to achieve our objectives, when it's best to postpone those outcomes and try and achieve them in further meetings and further follow-up meetings. And we also, need to learn patience and relationship build instead of focusing just on our outcomes. People want to get things done, tick them off their to-do list, but it's much more important to build relationships over the long term than just to get a few objectives crossed off your list in the short term. So emotional intelligence is really important and something that people need to learn and focus on. Okay, and that just comes with experience in business. So if you are a young employee, learn from those around you, learn from the older people in your organization who have been around a lot longer and maybe have a bit more patience. Maybe they're a lot calmer than you. Maybe you're young and ambitious and you want to get things done. So just, look to your older, more experienced employees in the organization to learn some of your emotional intelligence. Okay, so that really is it from me for this follow-up episode. Just wanted to put a few of those points into context and follow up with a few ideas. I hope that you liked the episode last week, and I hope you enjoy this follow-up episode this week. So those are my final thoughts. So just remember, make sure you've got your agenda clear. Make sure that you've got buy-in, so acceptance from everyone, and the data or the information that you're taking to the meeting is okayed by everyone that's participating either directly or indirectly in the meeting. Make sure that you plan effectively all of your handouts and that the information that you're bringing is correct. Make sure that you have a very clear agenda listing all the people who will be attending the meeting, and that you're on that agenda, both parties, both your team and the other team, have agreed on the points in the agenda. Try and make the outcomes that you want to achieve clear as possible, and also maybe their outcomes that they want to achieve as clear as possible. Make sure that you open the meeting by putting everything into context so that everyone's on the same page. Even if it's a big first meeting, try not to expect too much. Relationship build as opposed to just focusing on outcomes. And use your emotional intelligence. Know when it's time to push. Know when it's time to adjourn. And just build relationships for the future. And work on having great relationships with people in business. And that's it, my friends. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We will be back next week with some more stuff. Next week, I'm going to be focusing on a little bit of language for meetings. I'm going to sort of probably continue with meetings for the next couple of weeks, just now that we're on a bit of a roll with meetings. So I hope you're enjoying it. If you're interested in some of our wonderful courses, head over to the Art of Business English /university, and you'll see the offering we have there on all of our online courses for both general English and business English. And of course, if you're interested in any coaching or online one-to-one classes with me or my team, then get in touch. We'll be more than happy to put up or develop a little program for you that's focused on your needs. Okay, well, that's it from me, people. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I look forward to seeing you next week. Share it with your friends. Help me grow my community and reach more of you lovely language learners out there. Take care. Bye for now.